Exactly 2 years ago, almost to the day, Home Assistant announced that they were going to start what they dubbed Year of the Voice, where the whole of 2023 was going to see a big shift and a focus on adding a local, private voice assistant, which didn't really exist previously. And all through 2023 and all of this year in 2024, the team has been adding the building blocks of voice with seemingly every release. But we've never had any official hardware until today with the launch of the brand new Home Assistant Voice Preview Edition, the first official attempt at adding a dedicated voice assistant into Home Assistant. Let's check it out and see how it works. Full transparency, as always, this is important to mention. We are distributors and sellers of the Voice PE through our shop, which is of course a conflict of interest for this review. And so I do of course want to provide my own perspective and twist, and I think I can give my own unique information on the voice, and nothing is ever going to stop me from saying whatever it is that I want to say. But I would encourage you to watch reviews and check out other information from other creators out there, of which I'm sure your sub box is full of today, so that you can build up a full picture before you decide if it's for you and for your smart home. So I did just want to mention that before we get into the review. If you do want to pick one up, of course, I will have the links down in the description. As mentioned, Home Assistant Voice PE is the first hardware from Nabu Casa to tackle adding a voice assistant to Home Assistant, which has been one of the biggest features that's kind of been lacking in comparison to, say, people coming over from Amazon or Google Home. And this is it. It's a relatively small and compact unit in a more square, boxy design, finished in white with the translucent clear plastic that we've come to know from the green and the yellow. On the top we have a clickable button surrounded by a rotating dial for volume control, as well as an LED notification ring, and finally a dual microphone array. On the back we have a recessed hole housing the USB-C connector for power and a 3.5mm audio jack for outputting audio, and on the side a physical mute switch which cuts power to the microphones for those privacy conscious people out there. And finally on the front there is a speaker grill housing the internal speaker, and on the underside a tab that you can break off to access the Grove port, which is going to allow for expandability. On the inside we have an ESP32S3 processor accompanied by an XMOS processor which handles the audio processing side and provides features like echo cancellation, noise removal, as well as auto gain. And it's this XMOS processor that really separates it from previous voice hardware that we've seen in the past. The Voice PE is running ESP Home, of course, as we would of course expect, being from Nabu Casa, which is amazing, as it means that a lot of the huge improvements that they've made for the PE is going to be added into ESP Home for everyone to make use of, which is really cool, and it kind of reinforces their open source mission, along with the other nice touches like the feet on the base not being glued in and completely removable, as well as super easy disassembly. Finally, the price for the Voice PE is retailing for $59 or about £47. Once you plug in the voice to power and get it set up, it's going to start flashing, meaning that it's ready to go with the setup process. And then it's a really simple process to get it added to Home Assistant right from inside of the Home Assistant app. Enter your Wi-Fi details and then the guide is going to take you through saying the wake word to activate it, and that's pretty much it. You are going to be asked how you want to use voice in Home Assistant, either through Home Assistant Cloud if you are a Nabu Casa subscriber, or you can do it directly on your Home Assistant server. In Home Assistant you will get a bunch of entities including a media player, a volume slider, button events, controls for finished speaking detection, which allows you to change how quickly it stops listening after speaking has finished. You've also got controls for the LED ring, mute switch, wake sound, and a selector for the wake word, of which you can choose from 3 options as of the release. For those of you who don't know, the way Voice PE works is that there's kind of 2 elements to the voice portion of it, where you have a wake word, or the phrase that's used to kind of activate your Voice PE, and then you have the command or the query, which is what you actually want it to do or act on. And on the voice PE, wake word is done locally on the device, while the query is going to be handled by your Home Assistant server or Home Assistant cloud, depending on how you want to set it up. I don't want to get too technical into the details in a review like this, but I do think it is important to talk about this a little bit, since many of you will naturally compare this to the S3 box or DIY attempts at voice that we were able to do in the past. Having wake word on the device is a huge improvement over the likes of the S3 box, and you might be wondering how that can be when it's using the same micro wake word. And it seems like the audio processor really helps it to get the voice input as clean as possible so that the wake word model can do its best work upon it. So it's doing that auto gain and also echo cancellation and noise removal to clean up the voice input so that the wake word can do its thing as best as it can. And it's kind of like if you put rubbish in, you're going to get rubbish out. So if you speak the phrase and it's got echo and noise in it and just a lot of echo into the room, then the model is going to struggle and not work sometimes. But with the audio processor that's in the voice PE, it means you're getting great input and you're going to get great results out. It's not perfect. There was certainly the odd occasion where it didn't recognize me saying the OK Nabu wake word, which could be down to my accent perhaps, and even Google Home isn't perfect for my voice either, and it does sometimes miss. But I did find that the Hey Jarvis wake word seemed to work better for my voice specifically, and I don't think I had a single failure using that wake word, so that might be worth trying out if you're in the same boat as me. As for the query processing, I actually tried out a couple of different hardware options for doing local voice processing along with Home Assistant Cloud, and I was kind of continuously switching between them so I could get an idea of how they all work. Testing first on the Home Assistant Yellow or a Pi 4, I was getting around 2 to 3 seconds of voice processing on basic commands like turning lights on or off, and around 5 seconds for larger or longer queries. Okay Nabu, turn off the kitchen lights.
Turned off the lights.
Okay Nabu. I would say that all of the built-in Home Assistant sentences tend to work pretty good. I did experience the occasional miss where it would detect the word that I was saying incorrectly, but I find it to miss more words than usual when it's something more complex, like when you were speaking to ChatGPT, for example, which we will talk about in just a second. But I guess the best way that I can describe doing the local processing on a Pi 4 or a Yellow is that I find myself speaking to it more like how you speak to your granny when she can't hear you, if you know what I mean. Like slightly slower and more pronounced to make sure that it gets it. Which again is fine for on or off commands, it works pretty good, but not for more complex queries. This can be quite easily solved on the Yellow or a Pi 4 or similar hardware though, if you are a Nabu Casa subscriber, which gets you access to Home Assistant Cloud's voice processing. Now, I know some of you aren't down with using Cloud for voice commands, and I totally respect that, but for those of you who don't mind, you get a really great experience using Home Assistant Cloud, where they can run much more complex models much faster, and they're going to produce much better results. And the voice processing side on Home Assistant Cloud is crazy fast, talking about mere milliseconds to process the speech side, even for more complex queries. Simple on or off commands, we were talking about something like 0.1 seconds to fully process and do everything, which is absolutely crazy, and it feels very responsive. Okay Nabu, turn off the kitchen lights.
Turned off the lights.
But if you don't want to run the cloud and you want to have everything done locally, and you have even slightly more powerful hardware than a Pi 4, you can get great results doing everything locally. I use this mini computer, the iKoolCore R2, with an N95 processor, which is a very low power and not that new. There are more powerful and more efficient chips out there now. And stepping up in Whisper to the base model, I was able to get 1.1 to 1.2 seconds to complete everything for simple commands, which sounds like a lot, but when you're actually using it, it feels very quick, very snappy, and much quicker than anything that Google or Amazon would do. Okay, Nabu, turn off the kitchen lights.
Turned off the light.
Okay, Nabu, what's the time?
2:56 p.m.
I think inversely, the biggest praise that I can give is that with both the base model and above, or with Home Assistant Cloud, I was just talking completely naturally at my normal speed, and the failure rate was very, very low. So a small step up in hardware made a huge difference to the speed and also the accuracy of voice doing it locally. And again, it's that audio processor going to work and just making the voice input as clean as possible so that the voice model can do its thing properly. I was genuinely blown away at the difference in accuracy here compared to the S3 box that I used to use, for example. The cool thing is that even if the local model does happen to make a mistake to a word that you said, which didn't happen often, but if it did, if you have ChatGPT or another LLM setup with Home Assistant, it actually kind of saves you. So the LLM fallback option was just added in this month's release of Home Assistant, and during my testing of voice, I came to realize just how important of a feature that is to the voice PE. Like, I think it's one of the most important features to the voice preview edition. And it's really cool because there are a couple of times that I said something like, turn on the ceiling light, and the local voice thought that I said, turn on the ceiling height, for example. And the local processing was like, well, I have no idea what height is. And so it passed the query onto ChatGPT, and ChatGPT just turned on the light that I was speaking about because it seemed to recognize that it was a mistake, and because it just receives text, it probably thought it was a typo or something, and so it completed the action totally fine. And I thought that was really, really cool. Kind of like a backup to your voice model. And so my experience using the voice PE with local processing on this little computer with ChatGPT fallback was excellent, and I would definitely recommend it. It was a very good experience, at least for me. And if you want to know how much money I spent on ChatGPT, I spent about 6 cents yesterday on a day where I was asking significantly more questions than an average day. So let's be generous and call that around $2 per month on ChatGPT with voice. And you can run an LLM locally with Olama, which I also tried out. That works pretty good too, although you do need more powerful hardware running on your network for that if you want to use that as an option. The other huge advantage of the LLM feature is it turns the voice PE from a device that can only be used for turning on or off devices and lights in your smart home and puts it so much closer to the likes of a Google speaker or an Amazon, because all of a sudden it's able to answer all of these random questions and queries that you may have just like those can. And I think that is a huge, huge win for this device. What's the fastest way to get from Edinburgh to London?
The fastest way to get from Edinburgh to London is typically by taking a direct flight, which takes about 1.5 hours. However,
the other thing it can do, just like those other smart speakers, is, well, be a speaker. And it can play music, radio, or notifications on it. The speaker is usable, it's not extremely loud, and it can get a little distorted at max volume, but take it down just a notch and it's fine. It's never going to be incredible being this small of a device, but I don't mind it for the casual listening. One ace that it does have up its sleeve is its 3.5mm audio jack, which lets you take the voice PE and plug it into any other speaker that you may have in your house. So you have a banging speaker setup. You can take this, plug it in, and then suddenly you have a banging smart speaker setup, which is great. And it gives it a big advantage in that department over some other smart speakers. One thing I would love to see, however, that it doesn't do just yet, is for music playback to be easier. So I would love to be able to use my voice to play a song through Spotify, which it doesn't do natively. I could probably work around this by adding an automation into Home Assistant to handle that, but it's a bit more tricky for beginners, and if they could work out how to do that natively on the Voice PE without the need for an automation, that would be really, really game changing. You also can't go into the Spotify app on your phone, for example, and cast it to the Voice PE just yet. That would also be a great addition to kind of complete the music playing abilities on this speaker. I am hopeful, however, that we will see some big improvements in this area over time through updates. One thing that is a huge improvement on the PE over previous speakers is the voice commands while actually playing audio. So you will know if you ever tried to use voice before while music is actually playing in the room, even in the background, it was basically unusable since the microphone couldn't hear you over the music, and it would kind of get confused because there's suddenly two voices or whatever and it can't kind of pick up what you're saying. But because of the audio processor in the Voice PE, if you are playing music through the PE and you say the wake word, it's able to cancel out that music that is playing and hear you quite well, sometimes at even quite a distance. Okay, Nabi, what's the time?
3:36 p.m.
Okay, Nabi, what's the time?
3:36 p.m.
Okay, Nabi, what's the time?
3:36 p.m.
It also does things like audio ducking, so if music is playing and then you activate the wake word, the volume fades down and then it fades up once again after it's finished. One feature that a lot of people use on smart speakers though is timers, and those are supported here on the PE, and when you set a timer, it uses the LED notification ring as a visual indicator of the time left with a little pulse animation. There are actually a lot of nice little animations it does with the LED ring, which I love. And it also supports multiple timers all at the same time, which is really, really cool. Set a timer for 15 seconds.
Timer set for 15 seconds.
Okay, Nabu. Set a timer for 15 seconds. The only thing I would like to see would be a selectable timer sound so that you can kind of customize the sound that you get when the timer activates, but that's the kind of stuff I'm sure we will see in future updates. I didn't really run into many bugs, to be fair, with the PE, other than, for example, if music is playing and you press the middle button, it pauses whatever is currently playing on the speaker, which is fine. But if you press it again, I expected it to resume playing, but instead it activates assist, which I can kind of see why, but maybe a cool option would be to have a selectable drop down in the settings where you can kind of map the buttons to whatever action you want them to do. However, it is easy to resolve this with a simple automation where a double press of the middle button resumes playing whatever is on the speakers. So very easy to customize thanks to the power of Home Assistant. But for newcomers, a simple drop down would be super easy. There's also an Easter egg sound that you can trigger if you can find out the sequence, which I'll leave for you to figure out. Finally, let's talk about the name. What makes it a Preview Edition and why is it called Preview Edition? And basically it's to set realistic expectations about what this device is. The name Preview Edition is basically because they want people to understand that Home Assistant voice is still very much a work in progress, and it's a pretty great experience if you speak English like me, but for some of the other languages, those are less complete as of right now, and it's to let you know that your language may not be quite there just yet. But if you think about it, this hardware is really important even for those other languages, because people obviously need hardware to be able to test out and find out where the gaps in languages are and how well they work which is exactly what the Voice PE is for. It's for people who want to help keep building and make voice even better in Home Assistant, as well as have a cool voice experience. Now, if you do want to check out the progress of your language and even help out, then there is a little webpage that you can head to which shows you all of the languages they are working on and how well supported they are. As you can see, a lot of green and blue, but also there is definitely some red in there too, so make sure and have a check out of that just to make sure you are informed about where the progress of your language is. Naturally, the price will cause people to question why it's more expensive than Amazon or Google's offerings. It's not hugely more expensive than those, but my audience, you guys are pretty aware of what goes on with those devices. But it's well known that Amazon, for example, makes big losses on its smart speaker in the hardware side in the hopes of making up with the data that you give them when you use it to kind of subsidize the cost. But even now, there is a lot of talk about Amazon becoming a paid subscription for as high as $10 a month, which would quickly surpass the price of a Voice PE. But that aside, I for one, and I know many of you out there feel the same, I am willing to pay more for local and privacy focused hardware, and I actually think the price is great considering it does achieve that mission. I'm not just saying that because we sell it. I was actually genuinely expecting this to cost a little more when I heard this was coming before it was announced, and I've said many times in the past that I am willing to pay more for locally controlled hardware, which this is. But again, please do check out some of the other reviewers out there that are all launching videos today to see what they think and to get a full picture of the Voice PE. For me, this is a really, really great start and an attempt at voice hardware on Home Assistant, and I'm really excited to see people start using this, which in turn is going to make voice even better. And I think it's kind of like going to start to snowball that effect as people start using it and testing it. And of course, you should never buy things based on future updates. But I do think, knowing Home Assistant's track record, that this is only going to continue to get better over the next little while. If you do want to pick up a Voice PE, I'll have the links down in the description, of course. If you buy from us, then awesome. Thank you so much for supporting us. And if you want to buy from some of the other retailers, then that's cool too. I'll put links down in the description where you will find everything. And that's about it for this video on the Voice PE. I really hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I've seen lots of your comments over the last 2 years saying, year of the Voice ended and there was no hardware, Voice is dead and stuff like that. So I really love to hear what you think about this and if you're planning on picking up one of them down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Have an absolutely fantastic Christmas and happy holidays from me. I will see you in the next video.